I like not to think too much about genre when we're trying to create the story. I think sometimes you can really build parameters around you and borders that it's much more interesting if you cross them and you mix quite a few things, because in real life, it could be something like quite romantic happening, and at the same time, the next moment could be something quite horrific. And we have, with the film, we're trying to explore so many different themes of, human relationships and loss and everything, while at the same time you have a more horrific angle.
Hello everyone, welcome. It's Film Forums here and I'm the presenter Tati Haslam. I have the pleasure of interviewing George Popov, who wrote and directed his second feature film in 2020, The Droving. And this is something I actually wanted to ask you, because the genre, I feel, was quite mixed. It was kind of a drama / mystery / horror. Yeah, can you tell me about that? Was that intentional?
Yeah, sure. No, I love that. I love, I think, it's always easier when you have a main genre to be able to kind of give them the idea what kind of audience you're making this for and everything. And I hope we've invited quite a few people into it. And of course, our horror fans from the first film, really enjoyed that. But I like not to think too much about genre when we're trying to create the story. I think sometimes you can really build parameters around you and borders that it's much more interesting if you cross them and you mix quite a few things, because in real life, it could be something like quite romantic happening, and at the same time, the next moment could be something quite horrific. And we have, with the film, we're trying to explore so many different themes of, human relationships and loss and everything, while at the same time you have a more horrific angle. So I think you kind of have to mix the genre when you're dealing with this. You want to have a full, more emotional experience along the whole thing. So yeah, I think it makes it a bit richer and not just like a one-sided affair.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's really interesting. I think almost it can be dangerous to just put something in a box as well and say, I'm only going to make a horror, because then suddenly you're, having the stereotypes of what a horror film may bring. It's very open-minded.
Well, no, it's good to say that, because I was kind of worried that a lot of the reviewers, journalists, and all the horror fans are going to be quite, single-minded and be like, well, we expected something more akin to, but they're quite welcoming, especially when, now we've done like a couple of films and everything, and the horror audience, and they're so great, because anything that maybe somewhat obviously has the the tellings of a horror genre, they're open to, because there's so many subgenres you can deal with, as we said, there's folk horrors, which maybe what we're closer to, there is psychological, there's slasher, there's thriller, there's all these kinds that you can do. And I think it opens up a lot more than other genres. I think a lot more confining, I think, especially the ones that are very popular. If you make an action film, you kind of make an action film. There's only a few that manage to mix them. I mean, like First Blood or some of those that they put some drama into it and everything. But you have a big canvas with like thriller and horror in terms of emotion.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because something I was going to talk to you about later on was when you're making a film, on the writing process and the directing process, is it important to you that kind of aim to create something as original as it can be? For example, I know that you've said before that you want the kind of unpredictable element to your films, and you want something that, the audience isn't going to guess what happens. So trying to make it as original and as unique as possible to you, is that important in the process?
Yes, I mean, it is important, because I think it's, you have to me, it's like, what's the point of being a filmmaker if you're not going to add something new to the table? After that, if you're just doing everything what the other people have done before, it just feels like a job. It's like, well, here's my turn to make something that you were all seeing before. And especially when you're starting out, like me, from a very humble, indie way of like a smaller film, and then slightly bigger, smaller film, and everything, moving up, you have to offer something original, because otherwise no one's going to notice anything. They're not going to. There are so many films made these days that you kind of have to stand out in some way to carve your own niche and brand and feeling. But I don't try to do it for the sake of it being original. I think sometimes things can be good. I don't want it to feel like, that modern art piece that people just look at it and go like, what was that? Like, just, it was something for the sake of being original, but there's no emotional connection. And there's some things are classic because they work and because they're good. But I think there is a way of avoiding cliches while also crafting a story that people will, communicate with. And it's a vast spectrum. Some people that will call something original. On the other side, people say, "Well, I've seen that a million times before." It all depends on how many films you've seen and everything. So, yeah.
The reason why I asked is because then I noticed that those two things kind of coincided with each other, because you couldn't kind of pinpoint it to this genre. And I found when watching it, I was left thinking, almost, what did I just watch? Because there were moments where it was quite scary, and you built suspense, but then the psychological elements of it at the end, and the kind of, don't want to give too many spoilers away, but the kind of full circle element, the full cycle, like the cycle around, I found that really interesting, and it made me really, really enjoy it and want to talk to people about it.
Well, no. Thank you for saying that, and I think that's it. Like bringing something to people that, like, even if you're unsure about every single piece of it, I think that makes you think about it, and it makes you want to share with other people. Like, creates a word of mouth, and it's something that makes people think about it. We had one reviewer for our first film, HEX, that he kind of watched it and liked it, but there was a few things that he wasn't sure about, and he gave it 3 stars. And then a week after, like, there was a second review come out, and it was very interesting, because I've never done this before in my career. I went back, revisited, and now I'm giving this film 4 stars because, like, I needed to watch it again. Yeah, and it's really interesting because, like, it's so rare that happens. But that is rewarding because you want to build something that lasts, and you can view it more than one time, and you can rethink it, and you're hoping that it's going to be good enough on the first time that people like and enjoy it, get something out of it. It's something that you haven't seen before, and it might take you some time to appreciate it and understand it, but then it's so rewarding. I mean, we're so used to these days to being gratified like right in that second, that sometimes I think people are starting to learn again to appreciate when something takes a little bit more time to fully get it.
I really love what you just said, and I completely can see how that translates into the film. I know with Martin's character, Daniel Oldroyd, is that correct, who played him, I really did feel as though we were going on this journey with him throughout the movie, and I really liked the kind of slow pace around it. I think that was so refreshing, and that was really, really cleverly done with being filming at the Lake District. This was one of my questions, actually, was the idea of allowing a lot of empty time and space, and with the mountains, it was the perfect backdrop to have this slow pace. And I was going to ask, was that something that you wanted? You wanted it to feel so vast and open, and almost at the beginning it's quite slow to start, because was that intentional for you, that kind of?
Yes, it was. I mean, I'm always kind of trying to, and I think you do that with every film, and I might be 80 years old and I'll still be trying to do it. It's like you're trying to hit the right amount of keep telling the story and keep building up interest and doing character stuff, but also building about atmosphere. And I think to build up a really, really thick and transportative atmosphere, you need to use time to do that. And I think with my first film, HEX, I probably overdid it, because it was maybe a little bit too slow. But from that, I learned that I can craft an atmosphere that people really enjoy, and they can. Sometimes they'll say, like, I don't. Sometimes I just put the film, and I just want to enjoy the forest, or in this case, the mountains, or whatever. And you need some time to be able to appreciate the land, the sound, the music, like all of these elements that we're trying to craft together to put you in that world and make you feel like you're not just at home watching it or in the theater. And that does take some screen time to be able to do that. Hopefully we're not just doing that, we're still building intrigue, we're still building some suspense in some areas. But especially I love doing, I don't want to waste any time in terms of, for example, in both films, Droving especially, we have title sequences that also at the same time build up that atmosphere and create like there's music and visuals that put you into that world. So hopefully that helps.
Totally, yeah. I felt totally transported. And it was just really nice as well to see just, the gorgeous backdrop of the Lake District, and that kind of the unknown. Like, people are scared of the unknown, right? It's like the classic saying, it's not the dark you're scared of, it's what's in the dark. And I very much felt that. And well, I was just going to ask you, because both of the films, HEX and The Droving, somewhat involved war. I was wondering if war was kind of something you felt inspired by.
Yeah, no, it's a good. I mean, I think there's just, I don't know if it's something that I'm inspired by or just showing how limited my imagination is. But no, it's there's a few themes that like every filmmaker, they keep reoccurring, in terms of what you can do with it. I mean, I like with HEX and The Droving that we do. I mean, in both cases, like, Daniel plays a soldier, and that's why I wanted so much. Me and Jonathan wanted to bring him back from HEX because what he did there, showed that like there was so much more that he can do and give him a completely different character. Yet, he remained a soldier. But I think war changes. I mean, it never changes, but at the same time, it changes in the ways it's fought and the ways it is, and it's a big part of HEX's message. Where in The Droving is kind of in the backdrop. It's not it's only part of his character, but it's like an underlying sort of like a noise that's at the back of your head, that like at some point you understand how oppressive and disturbing it is, but it's not part of the main story the way HEX is, and that maybe even makes it more disturbing because you understand how much it influences his character and how much it has changed his character. War is broad enough to be able to draw from it quite a few things, and it will keep coming back, I'm sure, at some point. But hopefully, I'll try to change in the ways it does it, either on the forefront, on the background, or side characters. Or
something you briefly mentioned then was how you used some of the same actors. It was Susie and Daniel, both in HEX and The Droving. When you initially casted HEX, do you have a kind of set mind in how you want your characters to look?
Not always really. I think looks are often superficial. I mean, there are so many interesting things that you can do when you actually. I mean, the thing is, it's a great moment when you start to walk away from what usually, because it's normal when you're a filmmaker and when you imagine how someone looks. It's so explainable and psychological and easily kind of Freudian. It's like, oh, this character looks like me because I'm putting a lot of me in it, or this one looks like my mom or dad because I'm putting a lot in that. So it's a great moment when you realize where you can do so much more if you're not just making like those different molds of people who and there's more than that. In fact, like originally the character who's played by Susie in The Droving, we wrote it as this sort of like male hiker guy who had like a different sort of character and everything to him. But then as we're writing, it's like there's something just that's not that interesting. It feels a bit generic because he was. And then the moment we went like, I think we should just swap his gender and like add something more to that and really draw upon it. And then Susie just became such an easy answer then, not because only we've worked with her before, but it was a whole different aspect to the film that wasn't there before, just by making the character more interesting, making a choice that before that could have felt like just sort of generic. Now it added a lot new dimension to everything that met there, and it gave Martin such a more disturbing nature to him as well, that there is a part that you feel that he's ever so slightly hitting on this woman to be able to get more information. And then when he comes back, he's so cold and so disturbing that if it was some schmuck, that wouldn't do as much as how much we sympathize with Tess, with Susie in The Droving, and what eventually happens to her. So yeah, I try to do less of that. I'm just kind of, I want this person, unless there's a particular actor that I might be writing for, but I do that very rarely. So.
I think what you were saying there, I think Fluidity would you think is quite important for you as a director? So throughout the process, was there any examples of something that kind of, I don't know, was a mistake or wasn't originally planned in the first kind of script, and that actually an accident happened that made it into the final cut? I know that you, for example, played Alex, the boyfriend in it, which shocked me when I watched it, and I was like, "Oh, that's you!" Like I didn't know that was going to happen.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I mean, that was something that was just born out of. It was just a conversation that me and Jonathan had, and I just started describing what this boyfriend character is and what he was experiencing at the time. And I said, well, that kind of happened to me before. And then at some point, Jonathan went, well, you're an actor, you've acted before, why don't you do it? And I was like, oh, can I do that? So that was part of the working process, and it turned out to be, thankfully, not an embarrassing choice. Many other opportunities that happen that you kind of need to embrace it on the spot when you see something and you want to take advantage of it that's not initially planned, but then you do. Even during the shooting, especially during the edit, there's a lot of things that weren't exactly in the order they should be in the film, editing choices there. But you can only improvise and you can only take advantage of those if the foundation of what the film is about and what I say, like some staples for me, like atmosphere, theme, characters, psychology of that, like those are set in stone, and they're the foundation of what you can do. They're the solid ground on which you can start then doing, let's try this and let's try that. Because if you don't have this, then I don't feel comfortable improvising. Like even when I speak with actors, when like, oh, how do you feel about improvising lines? And I say, I have absolutely no problem if you even completely improvise the whole line, you change it completely. But you can only do that if you know my lines by heart 100%. Because that means that's a freeing moment when they're only then improvising, not because they don't know the lines or they don't understand what we're doing, but because this is a better choice that they're making on the spot. And that's when it feels right.
So playing the intention of the line, it just doesn't have to be word for word. It comes away from the script, but the meaning behind it's still there almost.
If anything, I was pushing, like they didn't improvise that much. I was pushing just like change it more, and they're like, no, it's already good. Like so, usually happens the opposite way with when you're directors of more controlling and everything. But that's because we have these pre-talks in which we talk already a lot about not on set, but before we start anything, and after the actors have read the script. We talk about, well, why would he say that? Why would she say that? What were they feeling at that moment? And we are so on the same page. And then the choices that are made on the day are just kind of more technical and more minute. I feel much better that way, rather than on the spot them trying to be like, right, so you believe in, it's like you don't want to do that between take 3 and 4 to kind of explain to them what the whole thing is about. Then that must be a big problem.
Amazing. Thank you. I think we'll have time for one more question, if you don't mind. I was just going to ask if there was any advice that you could give maybe aspiring filmmakers or screenwriters, or maybe a mistake that you've learned from in the past. Well, just any advice for them, really.
If I'm qualified to give advices, will be on the part of like, I think what we said earlier about being yourself and originality and all this, it's important. I don't think you should worry about it in terms of when it's fake and it's like, oh, what can I pull out of my to create something that no one's ever seen before. But by doing things, you will understand what you're really good at and what you really like doing, and don't try to stifle that to compensate for things that everybody else is doing, and that they're successful and or how things should be. It's that's down to absolutely everything. That's down to how you write, direct, act, do things. Is you have to use the best part of yourself, and learning what that is. It's the most difficult part. It's such a tiny little whispering sort of creature that you have inside you that's kind of the real you. That you can absolutely kill it by listening to all these like shouting voices around you. Like, oh, why don't you do this? Well, this sells a lot. Well, why don't you do that? And like, you should be like this, or oh, you're going to talk on the radio. You should sound like that. It's like like, no, listen to what really makes you you, because that's when people are really going to lean in and listen, because there's no one else like that. And that doesn't mean you should make decisions that are completely goofy, and you should not learn from other people's mistakes or experiences, but you should take that, yet cultivate your own self. And that, I think, it comes to every aspect: visual, a screenplay, your own sort of brand. I think all of that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you for finding the time to talking to us today. Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie, and I'm excited. I'm very excited to watch you and to follow your journey. It's amazing.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I love everything you said about the film. And yeah, I'm really happy that was your reaction. I think you truly got into it. And so thank you very much.
Thank you, George. It was lovely talking to you today.